Is the door cracked open for Washington State and Oregon State to join the Big 12? And is it tied in to ESPN's agreement with the college football playoff to extend that deal through 2032? That's what we're going to talk about tonight on this live edition of Couz's Corner. Thank you all for joining us tonight, for hopping in here on this live show here at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I am going to try to start doing more of these live shows. So hopefully you'll be able to join me almost weekly here. I'm probably going to do most of them on Monday nights. At least that's the plan. I need to start doing more live streams so I can let you guys interact with me and, just have some fun together. I don't do that enough. So anyway, let's get on with the content. You guys know there are several ways you can be involved in the conversation. Also, you can help me out by liking the video. Whether you're watching this live or watching it on the playback, the like button is always a benefit for us creators. It helps that YouTube algorithm. Drop a comment in the chat box if you're live or watching it back on the replay. Comment in the comment section as well. Be sure to share it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. If you are new, I cover West Virginia. I cover the Big 12, and I cover a lot about conference realignment. That's what I do here on the show. Want to give a quick shout out to my channel sponsor before we get too far along here. Dutch Miller Automotive. If you watch me a long time, you know that's my sponsor here. So let's do that real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes. This episode of Couz's Corner is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. And Dutch Miller does have locations outside the state of West Virginia, so go to DutchMillerAuto.com and see if they have a location near you. All right. Ross Dellinger put out an article today, and so did The Athletic. But the one I'm going to touch on first was the one in The Athletic, and then I'm going to touch on the Ross Dellinger piece. But the one in The Athletic, and I'm not going to read the whole article to you because it is behind a paywall. I'm going to leave a link in the description box. But what I will do is share part of it with you. Some of the key points that I want to make here regarding this door being cracked open potentially for Washington State and Oregon State. But right here is, and this article was in The Athletic by a joint article by Andrew Marchand, Nicole Auerbach, Stuart Mandel, and Chris Vanini. And again, these are just some of the key paragraphs from this article. ESPN and the college football playoff are in agreement on a 6-year, $7.8 billion extension that will make the network the home of the 12-team tournament through the 2031-2032 season, once CFP leaders sort out the specifics of how the postseason's new era will operate. Sources briefed on the deal told The Athletic. Right now, the one person holding that up is Kirk Schultz with Washington State, which is all going to tie in together. The full contract's completion is still contingent on CFP leaders finalizing details of the expanded format in the wake of the implosion of the Pac-12. The CFP's management committee and board of managers have meetings scheduled for next week and continue to work through the complicated process of settling their outstanding issues. The ESPN deal will not be ratified until the commissioners and presidents vote on the structure and financials of the expanded CFP. ESPN Senior Vice President of Communication Josh Krulewitz and College Football Playoff Executive Director Bill Hancock both declined to comment. ESPN has 2 years remaining on its current deal, which carries an average payment of $608 million per year and includes the CFP semifinals and championship, plus the other 4 New Year's Six bowl games. The 6-year extension will cost $1.3 billion per year. The price at which an ESPN news story previously reported the network was discussing a new deal with CFP. Now, that $1.3 billion, just like I've heard Greg Pflugar talk about, I saw Bob Thompson post about it on Twitter earlier, that is a lot lower than what I anticipated. I was expecting the deal to be closer to $2 billion a year, or at least, something like that. I mean, think about it. Right now, they're making, 400 and some million, almost 500 million. They're going to quadruple the number of games almost, but yet only double just the payout basically. So I don't get the number. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, Let's keep going. It says the board originally approved a model that includes the 6 highest-ranked conference champions and the 6th highest-ranked at-large teams. The impending departure of 10 teams from the Pac-12 has led to a push to tweak the model to 5 conference champions and 7 at-larges. The CFP Management Committee, which is made up of all 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame Athletic Director Jack Swarbrick, has recommended the 5+7 model, but the Board of Managers has not approved it. The board is expected to vote on it during a virtual meeting on Tuesday, per a source briefed on the process. Well, we've got 2 more years on a 12-year cycle and then an important conversation about the future, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey told The Athletic last week. We look at that independently. That's not part of what we announced with the advisory group, with the Big Ten. We're certainly interested in continuing the playoff, but there's work to do, end quote. Outstanding issues will still be settled for the CFP's new 6-year contract, include the ongoing discussions of future governance, revenue distribution, and access. The commissioners are working through all 3 areas and are expected to discuss them at a meeting next week in Dallas, sources involved in the discussion said. Now, again, that wasn't the whole article. It was only part of it. I'll leave a link in the description for the rest if you want to read the whole thing. But in a nutshell, there are $1.3 billion per year extension for the college football playoff through 2032, all with ESPN. And I think that part is important to this whole door cracked open to the Big 12 theory that I have here and why Kirk Schultz may be doing what he's doing. The ESPN piece is important to that. And that article obviously talked about that extension. And then the next article I'm going to talk about, which Ross Dellinger put out, talks about what Kirk Schultz is actually proposing. There's been reports that Kirk Schultz was basically saying, if you want my vote for this 5+7 model, then you need to, give us some guarantees. Well, Kirk Schultz is saying he's not really done that. He's just asking for more time to make some other proposals that might make sense. And in this article by Dellinger, that's basically what he's going to cover here is what is Kirk Schultz actually asking for here? Or what is he proposing? And it says, Washington State's Kirk Schultz to propose to CFP leaders that Pac-12 be treated as power conference for extended future. Washington State President Kirk Schultz will formally present a proposal to college football playoff leaders in a meeting next week that requests the Pac-12 be treated as a power conference in both revenue and voting rights for the extended future, he told Yahoo Sports. In an interview on Tuesday, Schultz confirmed Yahoo Sports' February 4th report of the proposal and said he's been granted a hearing to pitch the plan to the CFP Board of Managers, of which he is a member as the Pac-12's representative. The virtual meeting is set for Tuesday. In the proposal, the Pac-12, which will be made up of Washington State and Oregon State after this season, is asking the CFP to guarantee the same league revenue distribution amounts and voting privileges as other power conference programs starting in 2026, the first year of a potential new CFP contract. Now, let's remember now, they already have it through 24 and 25 because the Pac-12 is still officially a league through that time frame because of the NCAA rule that says a conference can remain as a league can remain a conference, even with only 2 members, for at least 2 years. So as of right now, they are still a conference, a power conference, at least for the next couple years. But once this 2024-2025 season's up and they have to have a new college football playoff deal, he's wanting some guarantees in that new deal that starts in 2026. Let's get back to the article. We've been an Autonomy 5 school and have resourced ourselves at that level for 25 to 30 years, Schultz said. Just because we were left standing in musical chairs, we just don't feel that we should be relegated by no fault of our own, end quote. In its current revenue model, the CFP distributes about $6 million annually to those programs in power leagues. Those in the group of 5 earn about $1 million in distribution. Now, I did some math earlier, and it was talked about on Greg's show earlier today. With this new proposal, the $1.3 billion proposal, I'm estimating that each Power 4 school will make about $15 million a year in college football playoff revenue. They get 80% of the revenue. I broke it down to approximately $15 million, give or take a few million, right? Or a few thousand. But so you're going from $6 million a year to $15 million a year. That's a huge jump, and that's important. The Pac-12 and its 2 members have been guaranteed the $6 million payment for 24-25, Schultz said. However, there is no contract beyond the 25 playoff. While the organization is finalizing an agreement for a 6-year extension with partner ESPN, there remains no adopted revenue distribution model or other framework starting in 2026 and beyond. Schultz's proposal is at the center of a delayed and important vote from the CFP Board of Managers, made up of presidents from the 10 FBS leagues in Notre Dame. 5 weeks ago, at an in-person meeting at the National Championship site in Houston, the Board of Managers was poised to adopt a recommendation from FBS commissioners to move from a 6+6 12-team playoff format to a 5+7 model. The move, in response to the Pac-12's realignment shakeup, decreases the automatic berths tied to conference champions from 6 to 5 and increases an at-large spot. And we all know that derived because of the Pac-12 implosion. The vote must be unanimous. This is for the next 2 years, 24 and 25. The vote must be unanimous, giving Schultz leverage over a significant decision as to the format over the next 2 years. In the interview Tuesday, Schultz shot down the idea that his vote is tied to the granting of his proposal, but he declined to reveal how he plans to vote. And here's another quote from Schultz: "We're not going to tie those two things together. That's not appropriate." He said, "There's been some speculation that the two are tied together. That would be the place where the Pac-12 Conference would not be a good colleague for college football by going, 'We've given you a proposal. You better do exactly as we ask or there's going to be some penalty,'" end quote. That's not the right stance to take. Schultz acknowledged that it behooves the Pac-12 to operate under a playoff format that has more at-large spots because of a policy change that commissioners adopted at a meeting in November. So he's admitting there that the 5+7 model is actually better for the Pac-12, or as it's constructed, than the 6+6. There's one more at-large bid, one more opportunity for them to get in. As a matter of fact, they won't get in the future, or even now for that matter, without that at-large bid, because the College Football Playoff Committee has already decided that you have to have at least 8 teams in your league to get an automatic berth. That did not have to go to vote. That did not have to have a unanimous vote, and it's already been decided on. So in order for them to have a chance to get in, they need as many at-large spots as possible. If you look ahead, clearly more at-large bids are going to be advantageous to the Pac-12, given that we no longer have status as an automatic qualifier. In the long run, that's where we need to be. No doubt in our minds that if you look at what's best for our schools, the 5+7 and more at-large spots is clearly going to be better for the Pac. Let's go down here to see where it talks about what he's actually asking for. Schultz and those at Oregon State are in the process of formulating a future plan to both protect the brand of the Pac-12 and potentially rebuild the league. The Pac-12 has 2 years to rebuild and reach the 8-school minimum before the NCAA no longer recognizes it as an FBS conference. Anyway, it goes down here to talk about the SMU thing, how SMU got a little more money than, they're not getting Group of 5 money, but they're also not getting Power 5 money. SMU's getting 50% of a Power 5 revenue distribution unit in 24, 75% in 25. But basically, what this article tells us, and that's the end of it there, but what this article is telling us is that Schultz is not going out and saying, "Hey, look, you have to give me what I want. You have to give us what we are asking for, or I'm not voting a certain way." But what he is saying is, look, give me time to make this proposal in our meeting next week, tell you what we're asking for, basically what he wants. He's cool with the 5+7 model. What he wants is Power 5 revenue in the future, and he wants voting rights in the future. He wants the Pac-12 to be recognized with voting rights and equal distribution. And you watching, that is not going to happen. Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, and probably even the other power conferences are likely not going to give that to him. But here is where I say maybe the door's cracked open for the Big 12, for them to enter the Big 12. With ESPN being the one who's going to have all the college football playoff content, right? Every game in the college football playoff, they're going to have it. This benefits ESPN to get this playoff deal done, and they're not signing the agreement. There was another article Ross Downer put out earlier today that I didn't get to that basically says ESPN agreed to this with the CFP, but they won't make it official until the CFP works through all of their disagreements and gets everything tied up basically on their end. They need some assurances that they're going to all agree on everything. And obviously they need Kirk Schultz to do that. So it benefits ESPN. It benefits each Power 5 conference to the tune of about $9 billion. $9 million a year. About $9 million a year per team per year is what it benefits these power leagues to get this deal done. That is not money they want to leave on the table. that is not money ESPN wants to leave on the table with all those advertisers. ESPN to me is getting a good deal here. If they're getting 11 games instead of 4 games, and they're only having to pay $1.3 billion, where now I think they're paying about $600 million for the playoff and all the New Year's Six games. They're basically doubling the price for quadruple the amount of games, or 3 times the amount of games, whatever it comes out to. But nonetheless, you get the point. I think it's a pretty good deal for ESPN. Probably a better deal for them, in my opinion, than it is for these conferences and these schools. But it's still a lot of money for every party involved. So what Kirk Schultz can do is say, look, or what ESPN can do rather is say, look, we need Kirk Schultz on board here. We need to get this deal done. He can go to the Big 12 and say, Brett Yormark, listen here. We will agree to pay pro rata for Washington State and Oregon State, our half of the pro rata, which is about $20 million a year. We will agree to that as long if you'll let them into the Big 12, so that we can and make them part of a power conference, so that we can get this deal done. Now, $20 million a year. Now, Fox may not agree to it, and Fox probably wouldn't agree to it to pay their part, which would be an extra 10 or 11 million. But $20 million a year as a member of the Big 12, getting only 2/3 of the revenue, is a heck of a lot better than being in the Mountain West and only getting about $4 million a year. So the Washington State and Oregon State could use this, use this as a negotiation tactic to get into the Big 12 potentially. And ESPN might back them and just throw up their hands and say, look, Big 12, let them in. And they may even say that to the ACC. I think it's less likely because the ACC already has 18 members. But now, do I think that's actually going to happen? It's probably not going to happen. But I do think it's something that folks at ESPN, maybe Kirk Schultz, maybe the Oregon State folks, maybe even the Big 12 could be considering. It's something they could consider. Especially if Brett Yormark really wants to go grab Gonzaga in basketball. Maybe he uses that to entice Gonzaga because they have travel partners up there. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not, like I said, I'm not predicting this to happen. Don't even think it'll happen. I think the Big 12 has proven that they do not want Washington State and Oregon State in the conference already, or they likely would have already added them a long time ago when they added the other schools, the other Pac-12 schools. But this could potentially be a door cracked open just a tad for them to get into the league. Now, I want to know what you guys think. I got a couple super chats I want to get to real quick. First one, Mr. John Teal, thank you for the $2 super chat. He says, if so, they'll hit the hole hard like Adrian Peterson. And he also says $20 million plus their slush funds from the PAC. Exactly. They have money. They're going to get the majority of the Pac-12 revenue that's coming in now for the next 2 years. They get that. 2 schools get to split that money for the most part, or at least most of it. Now, they won't be able to use all that money, John Teal, for these types of things because remember, we've got that house case lingering out there where they may be on the hook for tens of millions of dollars in back pay for NIL and other things. They probably need to use that slush fund money for those types of things, or at least most of it for those types of things. Now, they might be able to use a portion of it to help pay revenue for the next few years, but I think they need to use it as, quote, like a rainy day fund type deal for these court cases that could be coming down the pipe. If you guys want to getting a lot of people in the chat here, guys, you guys know how it works. If you want to make sure I see your comment, you can drop a super chat in the chat box. Hit the $sign. Drop your comment. It'll highlight your comment. I'll be sure to see it. It'll also put a star beside it, so I'll be sure to see it as well. And it's an easy way to support the show here. And, guys, there is another way. If you guys want to support Couz's Corner financially, and this is the only time I'll mention this, but if you want to support the show, another way you can do it that might be even easier for you than doing a super chat is to just join the channel. For $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month, you can become a VIP member of the channel. It's a paid membership, just like a lot of other creators do. I call mine VIP members. It's the only difference. But there are 4 members scrolling along the bottom of the screen right now. Jeremy Croy is one of those. Want to give him a shout out. Vernon Sheldon Witter is another one. Also want to give a shout out to Brad Cheney and Kenny Evans. Those are 4 of my current VIP channel members. If you want to become one, all you have to do is hit the join button. If you don't see a join button, go to the link in my description box. It'll take you to my channel page, and you can join that way. Again, it's an easy way to support what I do here if you like my work. You can also just hit like, share, comment, and subscribe as well. But let's see. Let me get to some comments in the chat. Let me see. Let me scroll up here. And also a super chat's a way for you guys to lead. If you want to talk about a specific topic, throw me a super chat, and I'll be sure to address that comment. Timothy Green, he says, I hope the door did open because they do not deserve to be left out. They are two proud programs and need to be in a good conference. Good point, Timothy. Patrick says, honestly, I think that Oregon State and Washington State should go to the ACC since it looks like the ACC might be losing some teams in the not-too-distant future. And that is a possibility. It could be another way for the ACC to backfill even more. That would put them up to 20 teams, if you obviously counting Notre Dame. But maybe it's an option for them as well. And ACC could go to them and have the same conversation as they did with the Big 12. Look, if you bring them into the ACC and just bring them into the fold as a power league, we'll pay that. We'll pay that pro rata just so we can get this college football playoff deal done so that we can secure our future and all this revenue for all of us to make going forward. Alan Aaron says, let's go WVU Mountaineers football. Eric Flowers says he was at Dutch Miller today for an oil change. Eric, thank you for supporting Dutch Miller Auto, man. We appreciate it. They support me. Appreciate you supporting them. What's up, Jeff Ruff, who's watching on Twitter? Bring them in. We're the Big 12. We'll take anybody. Jeff Ruff, by the way, I always forget to do this. For those of you who might be watching on X, I appreciate you as well. If you want to get all of my content, be sure to come over and check me out on YouTube. Subscribe over there as well. And make sure you turn notifications on. That way when I do go live and when I do release a new video, it'll notify you. Now, one thing I forget to remind people of, if you watch most of my content from a cell phone, from a mobile device, if you don't have your notifications turned on that mobile device, it won't notify you. That's something that I wasn't even aware of until a few weeks ago. But thanks to Jeff and others who might be watching here on X. Jeff is not a big fan of the fact that Big 12 brought in the 4 G5 schools, or the 3 G5 schools in BYU. He's made that clear on X multiple times. Timothy Green, a very low estimate on what they are really going to get. Lady Mountaineers are up 72-51 on TCU. That's awesome, man. I was going to watch that tonight, but I wanted to try to get on here and do this. Got 78 in here, guys. Thank you all for hopping in here tonight. I know a lot of you may have been over watching Greg Flugar a couple hours ago, and some of you may be coming over from the Big 12 Mafia show. His show may even still be going on. I don't know. But thank you for hopping in. We've got AAR says reports, rumors. ESPN will not extend ACC conference contract in 2025. ACC conference imploding. It's very possible, AAR. I know as Greg Swain put that out on his X account that it wasn't going to happen. It's very possible. But yet ESPN, the ACC still, those ACC schools still sign their life away to the ACC through 2036. Crazy stuff. Patrick Mahomes is winless against WVU. Great point. 0-2, as a matter of fact. David Frame says, add Washington State and Oregon State to the Big 12, but if they play West Virginia, they have to travel to West Virginia, even if they lose a home game. Also, add 2 teams from the East, UConn, and Memphis. Yeah, as a West Virginia fan, it would not excite me at all to bring those 2 teams in. We do not need any more Western teams, in my opinion. They need to start bringing in more Eastern time zone teams if they become available. But I don't like it. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm not saying I want it to happen. Not even saying it will happen. But I just think that this could be a negotiation tactic for Kirk Schultz to try to maneuver his way, so to speak, into a power league, because he knows ESPN and he knows these power conference schools are going to want to get this deal done for the college football playoff. And the longer he fights them on it, the longer he delays it. He might not be giving them a flat-out ultimatum, but he's delaying the process, basically, I think is what he's doing here. I think that's his strategy. He's delaying this as long as he can until somebody gives him what he wants, or at least most of what he wants. They may come to a settlement. They might come to a compromise. They say, look, we're not going to give you a full Power 5 share, but we'll give you, half of a Power 5 share or whatever. If they can, if instead of getting $15 million, maybe they give them $8 or 9 or 6 or whatever, instead of the $1 million share that, or whatever it is that the, or $3 million share that the group of 5 teams will get. Take me home, take on me. Is the Big 12 expanding or something? Not that I know of. I'm just saying it's a possibility, that distant possibility, but possibility that Kirk Schultz at Washington State, who's on the college football playoff board of managers and does have a vote in the future of what happens there, he could be using it as a negotiation tactic. And someone like ESPN could come in and who wants to get this deal done with the college football playoff could come in and say, look, Big 12, take Washington State, take Oregon State. We're willing to pay for them to come in just so we can get this deal done. Something like that. That's the angle I'm taking here. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying it is one more bullet, so to speak, in Kirk Schultz's gun that he could use. But maybe not even directly. Maybe he just thinks by delaying this process, the longer he delays it, the more likely it is something like that could happen. Ronnie Durrett says, I can see that happening. If it does happen, it will have to be ESPN to pay for it. Yep. Now, the way their contract with the Big 12 is set up, they pay 60% or 66%, actually 2/3 of the TV deal for the Big 12, which is about $20 million a year per team. So, they would only have to pay the 20. Fox likely wouldn't chip in their $10 million. But they wouldn't have to. I mean, Washington State would probably still agree to that, because $20 million in the Big 12 would be a lot more than making $4 or $5 million in the Mountain West, which is what they'll likely be relegated to if they can't get in a power conference. Don says we need more Eastern teams. Don Johnson says, no, you are right. We need more Eastern teams. I don't think anybody in the Big 12 want those 2 teams. Alan Aaron says, I wouldn't bring in any group of 5 teams. I would wait for the ACC to dissolve and the Big 12 bring in Pitt, Louisville, and Virginia Tech. That's what most of us are hoping for. Alan is, especially us West Virginia fans, right? We would love to see Pitt, Virginia Tech, and teams like that in our conference. It makes travel easier for our fans. You get some rivalries back in the league. It would be real exciting for us, and it would be good content for the Big 12 too. Get more rivalry games in the league. Get more TV eyeballs on the conference. I think it's a win-win for everybody. Nate Simons, who's an Iowa State fan. Thank you, Nate, for hopping in. And thank you for the comment. He says, no offense, but Oregon State and Washington State are a hard pass. Go and grab Pitt, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and one other. That's what, again, Nate, I hope, and down the road that could happen. But, the ACC implosion is not imminent, in my opinion. Does it seem to be heading in that direction? Yes. But is it imminent? I don't think it is. Even if they lose some teams, even if they do lose Florida State, they could lose 4 teams and still keep the conference intact, in my opinion. Now, it wouldn't be the same ACC we know today, but they could still keep the league intact and may even still keep their power conference status. They would basically be doing what happened to the Big 12. They would be losing their big brands. The Big 12 lost their big brands. They were able to survive. Now, as long as multiple teams don't leave. Now, if ESPN doesn't renew that TV deal, that might change the game right there. That could definitely be the game changer if ESPN decides not to renew that deal for 2027 and beyond. Then you could start seeing teams bolt in the middle of the night potentially. That's what we got to keep our eye on. And Liz, remember, if ESPN will make that decision sometime by early 2025 is my understanding. So we will likely know something in the next year or so, whether or not ESPN decides to extend that deal with the ACC. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. David Frame says UConn for basketball in Memphis is building a new football stadium, plus it gives us Tennessee. I'd be okay with that. I've actually been an advocate for adding UConn. A lot of Big 12 fans don't agree with me, but I think UConn will be a great add for the Big 12. Their basketball brand is almost unmatched right now in the country. They do have a football team. They're not great, but they do have one. Right now they have a good coach in Jim Mora. He seems to have them trending in the right direction. From some of the things I've read, I do think they seem to be trying to invest some money in football, not as much as you'd like to see, but I do think they're trying to invest money in football, and they're a great academic school. If you want to look at academics and want to try to improve the academic standing of the league, then maybe you go that route. It's definitely possible. Cyclone Steve says, crazy idea. They take them on the condition that the Big 12's deal will never be less than 50% of the SEC deal. That's definitely outside the box. Hadn't thought about that one. Not bad, Cyclone Steve. I don't know that would. I don't think they would ever agree to that because the Big 12's value is not 50% of the SEC's value, in my opinion. And that would offset any additional money ESPN might make from that college football playoff, if that makes sense. Hopefully, I explained my argument there clearly. PA Mountaineer says, whoever the SEC and Big Ten don't want, I think the Big 12 should swoop in and get them. Yeah, within reason. I mean, I don't want them to just go take anybody. You don't want to dilute the league. I mean, it needs to be teams that bring at least equal value to what you have. I think teams like Pitt, Virginia Tech, NC State obviously come to mind. Louisville comes to mind. Outside of that, I mean, I don't think Boston College adds anything to the league, really. The only way you might look at adding teams like Boston College, now Syracuse might actually. Syracuse actually might not be a bad ad. Syracuse has got a pretty solid brand in both sports. They're not as good in football as they once were, but they're still a solid brand. They've got a good history there, and they have a pretty passionate fan base up there in upstate New York. But you might consider bringing some of those schools in if you get UConn, maybe as travel partners for Olympic sports and those types of things, and for basketball. That's an idea. But it seems like Boston College, Wake Forest doesn't really excite me. NC State does. I do like the idea of NC State. I think they would be a good fit for the league, but not necessarily Boston College. And Georgia Tech doesn't really excite me either. However, getting into that Atlanta market would be pretty cool, I think, for the Big 12 to plant a flag there. No Gardner Webb, Philip. Sorry, buddy. We're not going to be adding Gardner Webb. Gardner Webb. I just don't think they're going to bring quite that $30 million a year value, Philip. What do you think, man? That's funny. Some other news today, guys, that I'll touch on for just a second is there was an article that came out today also about Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips, and I'll just basically summarize it for you. But Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips basically are wanting to do something similar. We've read about what the Big Ten and SEC are doing, forming this committee or whatever about the future of college sports and things like that. And maybe even talking about planning around the college football playoff and whatnot. Well, the ACC and Big 12 apparently are wanting to do something similar maybe with basketball. They would like to see a breakaway from the NCAA. They would like to see the power conferences break away from the NCAA tournament and do their own thing because they feel like they're the two strongest basketball conferences in the country, and they feel like that's their strength, and they're wanting to expand the NCAA tournament and add more at-large bids to the tournament, which we all know they feel like that would help the ACC and Big 12 down the road more so than probably the SEC and the Big 10. Maybe that's true. I'd have to do more research on that and look at the numbers maybe, but in theory, it sounds like not a bad idea. I trust Brett Yormark, and I trust whatever he decides to do. I think he's a good commissioner. I think he's forward thinking. I think he has great ideas, and I think he'll lead the conference in the right direction. But in essence, we could eventually see the Power Four conferences expand the college football playoff up to 16 teams at some point, maybe. We could see the NCAA tournament expanded, and we could see more at-large bids in both of those tournaments in the postseason. And it's all to provide more revenue for the power leagues at the end of the day. Is what it's all for. As a West Virginia fan, I want to see my team bring in as much revenue as possible. And if that's what it takes to do it, then I'm on board for it. Nate Simons says, I could see getting Syracuse. They just beat North Carolina in basketball. Yeah, Syracuse is not a bad brand at all. I mean, Jim Boeheim brought that basketball program to national prominence. They won national championships there, multiple Final Fours, those types of things. And then obviously football, they were good for years in the Big East. The Donovan McNabb days and even before that, they were good. And they've had some decent seasons recently as well. Nothing like they did back in the 90s, but they definitely had some respectable seasons. And they have a passionate fan base. Syracuse fans are passionate, and I think there's probably more of them out there than what we realize. But they're kind of buried up there in the northeastern part of the country, so we don't, the northeastern part of the country doesn't get as much love when it comes to football, or as much respect as the southern part of the country. Let's face it. David Frame says, could always bring Marshall in. They beat Notre Dame in the year before last and almost beat North Carolina State 48-41 and beat Virginia Tech this year. Yeah, I don't think Marshall's a Power 5 caliber team, David. Sorry. I love Marshall. I have nothing against Marshall. My daughter's going to be going to Marshall, but they're not Power 4 level just yet, man. Maybe one of these days, but not yet. I mean, their fan base is not that big. Their fans are passionate, very passionate, and they do a good job filling that stadium up. And from what I understand, it's a great atmosphere on game day, but I just don't think they're big enough just yet. Wouldn't add enough revenue. Harry Austin says, if the ACC implodes, do you visit Stanford or Cal? I would love a combo of the Beavers and Stanford, but doubt Cal-Stanford split. It would be interesting. Here's a theory, and I'm not the first one to stall this. I've heard others talk about it. But let's say the Pac-12 stays intact for this next 2 years. I mentioned earlier they have a 2-year window where they can remain a conference. They get 2 years to try to build back up to 8 teams. And if they don't reach 8 teams within 2 years, they're no longer a conference. Well, let's say Washington State and Oregon State hold on and keep the thing afloat for 2 years. Well, within that 2 years, the ACC implodes. Do Stanford and Cal decide they want to go back to the PAC, rejoin Washington State and Oregon State? It'd be interesting to see. Then you have 4 teams. Now you're only 4 teams away from having your 8 teams. Then what happens? That would be interesting. And then do some of the teams who left for the Big 12 decide they want to go back to the PAC conference? Or do they just go grab 2 of the top teams from the American, 2 of the top teams from the Mountain West? There's your 8 teams, and there's your FBS conference. And would they be able to keep Power 5 status that way by keeping the Pac-12 umbrella? That's interesting. That's a theory I've thought of. I just don't see the Big 12 absorbing all 4 of those teams. I'm not sure, especially Stanford and Cal. I've read reports that Stanford and Cal actually reached out to the Big 12 when they saw the Pac-12 was falling apart, or maybe afterwards, and there was just no interest in the Big 12 to add them. They just don't bring enough value from a conference perspective as far as athletics, as far as eyeballs, because we all know football and basketball are the 2 revenue sports, and neither of those schools move the needle in that regard. Now, Stanford is one of the best athletic programs in the country when it comes to non-revenue sports. They've won more championships than anybody else. But when it comes to football and basketball that drive the bus, especially football, the Big 12 decided they just weren't a good fit. Patrick says, I would say if the ACC loses members, they might have an interest in adding Oregon State and Washington State, potentially. Patrick, I could see that. David Frame says, I'm just trying to find us some East Coast teams. Man, how about Rice? Nah, I'll pass on Rice. And that's not East Coast either. That's down in Texas. I'll pass on Rice. We have enough. I feel like we have enough Texas teams in the Big 12. I would love to get some East Coast teams, but I want to make sure they bring value to the league. I don't want to dilute it and dilute the revenue going forward. Because remember, we have to renegotiate our TV deal in 2031. Big 12 does, and I don't want to bring teams in that might cause the value of that deal to drop. And if you bring in a whole lot of G5 teams, there's a potential that could happen. Again, guys, if you want to make sure, if you got something else you want to talk about, you want to guide the conversation in the direction you want to go, drop a super chat in the comment box. There's a $sign there you can hit and leave your comment. It'll highlight it, and I'll read your question and answer it the best I can. Yeah, Stanford and Cal is problematic. I don't think they're a cultural fit either. They would be a fish out of water in the Big 12 culturally. I've seen some graphics of, and I don't want to get too much into politics, but the political lean of each conference. The Big 12 leans politically right big time, whereas Stanford and Cal, no way. So I don't think they would be a good fit. It could cause issues when you're in the room negotiating, TV deals, negotiating rules for the league, and all this other stuff, they're probably not going to see the world through the same lens, And I think that could, not necessarily saying that, it's bad or good one way or the other, but it's different. Nate Simon says we need to go east in the next expansion, need regional rivals for West Virginia, UCF to remain strong. WVU has sacrificed enough being in the Eastern Island for so many years. Hey, Nate, thank you, man. You know what I have found? There are a lot of fellow Big 12 fans out there from you want to call it the Irate 8, whatever, the Legacy 8. Those that were in the Midwest, the 7 other than West Virginia. Let's just put it, the 7 other than West Virginia, and even some of the newcomers from the group of 5 that have really shown a lot of respect towards West Virginia and have said that same thing, Nate, have said, hey, we would love to see West Virginia get some rivals in here. We'd love to see West Virginia get some easier travel. It's one reason I've fallen in love with this league. I really, the fan bases in this league are awesome. I don't know that there are better fan bases in the country than right here in the Big 12 Conference. I mean, it's just awesome. Very passionate fans, very loyal fans. In most cases, very respectable fans. Obviously, there's going to be some trash talk. It's all part of the fun. But at the end of the day, I think we all love the Big 12 and all want each of the teams to be successful in their own way. Kansas and West Virginia will be part of the Power 2. 32-team conference with 4 divisions of 8 teams, says Randolph Miller. Very possible. Very possible that could happen. To me, if it goes for West Virginia to get a seat at that Power 2 table, it would need to go to at least 24 per conference, in my opinion, probably for them to get it. I don't think 20 gets you there. Maybe it does, but I doubt it. Might have to go to 24, but we'll see. But again, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. I'm hoping they're going to be. I would love to see a Power 4 remain. I don't want to see the 8. Now, do I want to see the Big 12 go pick off some ACC teams? Absolutely. But I don't want the ACC to die as a conference. I would love to see the ACC stay intact. I'd love to see the Big 12 go get Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, maybe NC State, bring them into the Big 12 fold, have an eastern wing of the Big 12. ACC remains a conference with the teams that it keeps, maybe promote a USF and a UConn to the ACC, whatever. You still have a Power 4, and everybody goes about their merry way. That's what I would like to see happen. Because to me, if the ACC dies, then you're down to a Power 3, right? But then that might sound good on the surface, but all it does is give the Big 10 and the SEC even more power, because now there are only 3 power conferences. It's 2 versus 1 now at this point. It's SEC and Big 10 voting block against the Big 12. And the Big 12 is going to get outnumbered in almost every scenario in that case. Or at least if the ACC's there and them and the Big 12 are kind of simpatico, so to speak, or kind of seeing each other or seeing things the same way because they're peers financially, they can kind of, compete with the SEC and Big 10 as far as voting and all that stuff. That is if the SEC and Big 10 don't decide to pull away anyway. Now, if they pull away anyway, then there's nothing we can do about it. Philip says, what's your FanDuel I'm predicting 6.5 wins? Yeah, I've been thinking about doing a video on that. I just didn't really know how to. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say to make a full video on it, but I will say this, Philip, I think it's low. I really think 6.5 is low, and that could be West Virginia's rallying cry, so to speak, for the 2024 season. 14 was their rallying cry for this season, for the 2023 season, because they got picked 14th in the Big 12. Maybe this year it's 6.5. I don't know, just something to think about. But I do. I mean, it's obviously better than what last year. I think it was 5.5 or 4.5 in some cases. So it's better, but I still think it's lower than it should be. I would have put it at 7.5 personally. And I know that's only one game, but it's a pretty big difference when you're talking spreads in Vegas. Alan Aaron says, is this true? Someone told me that when Texas and Oklahoma lead, the WVU will be the biggest brand. Alan, it is true, man. If you look at most of the metrics, and people may think I'm biased, but when you look at most of the metrics, wins, bowl appearances, all of that stuff, West Virginia's going to be the biggest brand, in my opinion. Now, Oklahoma State probably has a legit argument there too. Maybe Texas Tech. I don't know. But if you look historically, I think West Virginia's, I think they sell the most merch of any other team in the Big 12. Their TV viewership is right up there. Maybe will be one of the top 2 or 3. Like I said, their number of wins all time, number of weeks spent in AP poll, all of that stuff. Conference titles, the whole bit. Now, West Virginia spent a huge chunk of their time as an independent, so that really skews those. When you look at the number of conference championships, there were a lot of years. Like for example, in 1988, when they played for a national title, they were what they call an Eastern Independent at that time. They weren't in a conference, so can't win a conference title if you're not in a conference. But I do think they're the biggest brand, Alan. I've actually been meaning to do a video on that. I need to do that, don't I? David Frame says, West Virginia has definitely paid their dues. I have great hope for UCF. AAR says, hold on, WV Mountaineers. Pitt Panthers are in play. Big Ten Conference fans trashed Pitt today at Peek Around the Corner. Yeah, Pitt is not very well liked, I've noticed. I even saw Kansas fans trashing Pitt the other day, and I'm trying to figure out why. I'm okay with it, obviously, as a West Virginia fan, but what has Pitt done that's got fans from around the country mad at them? Matt Ritson says, how do ACC handle baseball and softball next year's stay full week or play weekend? Handle baseball and softball next year, stay full week or play weekend. Matt, I'll be honest, I don't know that I understand your question. I apologize. Mountaineer J-Dub, thanks for joining us, man. He says WV will win 9 games. I hope so. David Frame says, I don't think Arizona State fits in the Big 12. Yeah, I mean, I could see that argument. It's a fair argument. I think they're okay. I'm glad to have them in. I think having that Phoenix market is good. Arizona State has them and UCF are the largest 2 enrollments of any team of any school in the country as far as public universities go. So, I think that's a good thing, especially if we can keep them long term. I think that bodes well for the league down the road. That's a lot of alumni. That's a lot of Arizona State alumni that will be watching Big 12 football, and I think that's a good thing. I think bringing them in and bringing UCF in the short term, it may not look like it's exciting, but I think long term, if you look long term for the health of the league, I think both of them were good moves for the simple reason of the size of their enrollment, student enrollment. Mountaineer J-Dub says, always going to support you, big dog. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Same here, Brent. Same here, my man. Again, guys, getting close to calling it a night here. If you guys got anything else you want to talk about, be sure to drop in the chat. David Frame says, us Mountaineers love us some Pitt football. We'll definitely take them in the Big 12. Yeah, we take them. I don't love Pitt football, but I love playing Pitt in football. If I think that's probably what you meant, David. But yes, I would love to have Pitt in the Big 12. Anthony Carlson, Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech for first 4 teams. I agree with 3 of those 4. I would personally, I'd rather have NC State than Georgia Tech, simply because I think getting into the Carolinas is a big deal. And I just personally think NC State's a better brand than Georgia Tech right now. NC State's winning more games. Their program's in a better spot. And for selfish reasons, it's easier to drive to. I can be to Raleigh-Durham from my house in 4 hours. Or to drive to Georgia Tech, it will take me about 5.5 to 6. Roy Ellison says, Couz, you do such a good job. Roy, I appreciate you, my man. Roy is me and Roy go back a ways. He and I went to college together at Bluefield State University. Nate Simon says, what is your opinion on ESPN putting the Big 12 men's basketball game that could decide who gets number 1 spot in Kansas City on ESPNU? Man, I'm torn on the ESPNU thing. I've not been real happy with. They have been putting the West Virginia men's, other than tonight, obviously, they have been on Saturdays, especially. They have been putting the West Virginia men's and women's games on at the exact same time. How can they expect us to support our women's teams when they're putting their games on at the exact same time as the men's team? Makes no sense to me. I'm not a huge fan of the way ESPN does things, but at the end of the day, the Big 12 needed ESPN to get their media deal done. They need content for ESPN Plus, and it brings more money into the conference. I don't like the way they do things, but if it helps my team, West Virginia, make more money and helps keep us afloat and helps keep us a power conference team, then do what you got to do, man. It sucks, but it is what it is at this point. If you can't beat them, join them, right? Duke is not a target, and I apologize, Couz, for asking for your opinion on PATC live stream about it. Oh, and I don't care, man. I love PATC. I actually watched it for a little while, then I had to quit because I had something I had to do here at the house. But now, matter of fact, I listened to most of it, even while I was working. But yeah, I watch every show I can of PAT. It's one of my favorite shows. You're not hurting my feelings at all, brother. But I do appreciate the respect and you thinking about it. But he says Duke is not a target, and I apologize. Yeah, I don't think Duke is a target either. And I hadn't even mentioned Duke. The only way Duke might become a target is if the Big 12 does decide to go all in basketball, and if they can get the basketball deal separate from the football deal, then maybe they go after Duke. But until that happens, I don't think Duke is in play right now. I really don't. And don't really think they need to be, unless that's the play. Mountaineer J-Dub says Louisville, Pitt, VT, UVA. I think VT, UVA are tied to the hip. Yeah, I'm afraid of that. I know they were. UVA helped get VT in the ACC back in the day. And I know their attorney general has come out and said he'll be looking out for the best interest. But I think at the end of the day, money's going to talk. And if UVA needs to break away from Virginia Tech to get in the SEC or Big Ten, I think they'll do it. I'll be honest. David Frame says, Mountaineers in black uniforms, Penn State in white uniforms. How big do you think that game is for Neil Brown? It's massive. Well, let me back up. I don't want to say it's massive. For Neil Brown's career, I don't think it's that big of a game, honestly. He can lose that game and still be fine. But it's a huge game for us as fans. We haven't had a game that big in Morgantown, in my opinion, since the LSU game, outside of Pitt, obviously, the rivalry game. But as far as a team that's going to be ranked high and all that coming into Morgantown, the last time I remember that happening in non-conference play is when LSU came to Morgantown back in, 2014, 15, somewhere in there? Remind me what year that was. I don't remember. But anyway, it may have even been 2012. I think it was 2012, actually, when LSU came to Morgantown to play. I was at that game, and it's the loudest I've ever heard that stadium. And I think we may get close to that when Penn State comes to town. And by the way, the black uniform idea, I love it. I think it's great. I know a lot of people don't. I love the idea of a black uniform. And here's the reason why. Number one, the players like it. The players like changing things up. They like exciting new uniforms and things, right? It's new. It's fresh. It helps recruiting. That's number one. Number two is money. Every time West Virginia has a new uniform, you know what they do? They sell jerseys of that uniform. They sell shirts that look like that uniform. They sell T-shirts with that design on it, whatever. It's all about merchandising. It's all about revenue, marketing. All that kind of stuff Roy Ellison and I learned about in school. And every time they have a new uniform combination, it's more revenue opportunities for the program. So I'm all for it, man. Bring it on. And it'll be great for TV. It'll bring some, it's PR. They can post them on social media. It's more PR for the university, for the team. I love it. Roy says, have to say it. When Bluefield State College became Bluefield State University, I was never happier. I have a BS from BSU as you do. As do you. Absolutely, man. Roy and I took business classes. We're both business administration majors from Bluefield State University right here in southern West by God, Virginia. And they were Bluefield State College when we went in, a few years back. Just in the last few years, they reached university status. So, which was a big deal. It's something they've been trying to achieve for a long time. Richard Snyder says, I would love to see another network outbid ESPN for their coverage of college sports. Yeah, I'm not real happy, and I didn't even mention this in my opening, but I'm not real happy about the fact ESPN is going to be getting 100% of the college football playoff. I wish they had to put it out for bid, honestly. But, it is what it is. Might could have made more money putting it out for bid. I'm not sure the reason they didn't. Now, ESPN does have the option of sublicensing some stuff, but it's totally up to them to do it. Big 12, the college football playoff has no say in it. Love Sports, thank you for coming on. He says, do you think, or they say, they might be a woman, I shouldn't say he. Do you think UVA and VT are really tied at the hip? Same for UNC and NC State, or when the sausage making happens, will it tear them apart? At one time, I thought both of them were. I'm now starting, after listening to what Greg Flugar had to say today, I'm now starting to think that UNC and NC State are less and less tied at the hip than they were. I think the board will try to tie them at the hip. And Virginia Tech, though, the way things happen in that state, it's going to be tough for them to separate them, I think, honestly. I think the political pressure would make it tough to do. And Virginia Tech carries a lot of weight in that state. A lot of people don't realize Virginia Tech is a really good brand. In my opinion, a better brand than UVA. UVA has the academics. And Virginia Tech's a good academic school, too. Don't get me wrong. But when you look in U.S. News and all the high reports, they're the ones that are up there, with the top near with the near the Stanfords and the Couz and those of the world. UVA's on that list. Virginia Tech's several spots down, but they're still pretty high. But when it comes to football and sports, especially football, Virginia Tech's that brand in Virginia. David Frame says, for the Penn State game, do we come out to Metallica? I hadn't thought about that. Actually, might not be nah, I don't know, man. You thinking Fade to Black? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you thinking like my guy Mountaineer Paul talked about earlier, maybe Back in Black by AC/DC? What are you thinking, David? Everything ain't got to be about old tradition, and we got to start setting new traditions and having fun and making money. Bingo. That's exactly how I feel, David. Thank you, my man. Anthony Carlson, I wonder what Golden Blue Dude would say about who would join the Big 12. Anthony, he would be having a field day. I bet Golden Blue Dude would have been talking about probably something similar to what I'm talking about. Hey, does this mean Washington State and Oregon State come to the Big 12? Something like that. It's hard to tell what he would think up in that head of his, man. His mind, he was so good at coming up with all these different scenarios with conference realignment. Much better at it than I am, man. I miss that guy. I really do. Miss watching his show, miss being on his show, miss having him on my show. I mean, we did a lot. We got into where we did quite a bit together there near at the end there. But yeah, he would be cooking up all kinds of scenarios, man. Roy says AC/DC because Tech does Metallica, a.k.a. ruiner of Napster. Yeah. Y'all remember that back in the day when, for those of you who are old enough, when Napster was like the first company that come out and allowed you to download music, and you could do it for free. You could download music for free, man. And Metallica did not like it. They come out and they filed a lawsuit against Napster. And now, dang it, we got to pay to download music. Daggone Metallica, ruined it for everybody. But now, I love both those bands. But if I had to pick one, overall, I would probably pick AC/DC, to be honest. AC/DC Back in Black, never thought of that. That's awesome. Yeah, that Mountaineer Paul talked about that on his live show earlier about this same topic. Well, guys, it's getting late. It's almost 10 o'clock here where I'm at. The wife's getting ready to go to bed. She has to get up early in the morning. I really appreciate everybody hopping on here. We had over 90 people on here at one time. Pretty good turnout for one I kind of threw together last minute. Be on the lookout. I am going to start trying to do more live streams. Hopefully, my plan is, if it doesn't get changed, is to start doing one every Monday night. Now, I'm going to have to work around West Virginia basketball a little bit here for the next couple of weeks. But I'm going to try to do live streams every Monday night about 8 o'clock or so, maybe 9, depending on what's going on. But so be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, it'll give you guys something to look forward to every week. And we can get on here and chat and shoot the breeze for an hour or so once a week at least. So, and obviously, anytime news breaks, I try to do one as well. Don't forget to hit Mountaineer Paul and I up on our basketball channel called Hoops from the Hills. Subscribe to us over there. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, whether you're watching on the replay or watching live. Don't forget, if you want to become a VIP channel member, it's a good way to support me. It's an easy way to support me. Hit the join button right there. Become a monthly member. It's $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month. And don't forget, guys, I got to advertise this before I get off of here. The Holler, which is West Virginia Sports Now subscription service. If you want access to their behind-the-scenes content that they release only to their subscribers, if you use promo code Couz, C-O-U-Z, when you sign up for the Holler, you get a 1-year membership for $21. You can't beat that deal, man. Without that code, full price, it's $34.99, I think. It's $21 if you use promo code Couz for a 1-year subscription to the Holler over at West Virginia Sports Now. Mike Osti, Ethan Bach, they do great work over there covering West Virginia sports. I was able to partner with them, privileged to do so. Love their work, respect their work, and they're friends of the show. So right now, go to WV Sports Now, sign up for the Holler, get a 1-year membership for $21 if you use promo code Couz, C-O-U-Z, at checkout. Wanted to get that in, guys, before I signed off. Don't forget to show love to my sponsor, Dutch Miller Automotive. Tide Guy, thank you for hopping on last second, my brother. Sooner Legends Podcast. Go check him out as well. Good night, everybody. Thanks for hopping on the show tonight. Q Country Roads.